Welcome to The Impossible, where we empower others to face the impossible, inspire them to be impossible, and motivate them to do the impossible. I'm Matt, and I'm back here, as always, with my brother, Austin Douglas. How you doing tonight, man?
Fantastic. Hello, everyone.
Good. Yeah, we are very honored to bring you guys this episode. You know, we've been working through this series where we've been talking with a lot of different, just unbelievable, impossible people that we know who have been affected by childhood cancer in one way or another. And you guys heard our conversation last week with Desney Crock, who talked a little bit about the organization BrAva that works here in the Mid-Ohio Valley and how she's been able to be a part of that and how her daughter's journey helped inspire some of that work. And tonight we are incredibly honored to bring the other half of BrAva, Traci Nichols, on the podcast to share her story of how she and her family has been impacted by childhood cancer and their journey of how they worked through some of the hardest things any human, any parent, anybody could ever imagine having to face, and how they've come out now to be able to serve countless others in countless ways, inspiring so many people who have had to go through this fight themselves, and how they work throughout their lives to be able to impact others so that they can go through their journey with hope. And you guys know that we are all about spreading hope as much as possible, because we feel that it allows us to give back to others who are battling through that same journey, but it also empowers you to be able to fight through any situation you're fighting through today. So guys, we are incredibly thankful and honored to have Miss Traci Nichols on the podcast today.
Thank you. That is quite the introduction. Thank you.
No, we always try to honor our guests, but man, we just are blessed to have so many incredible guests that it's like, it sounds like, you know, we're building everybody up so much, but it's like our introductions can't hold a candle to who you actually are. So,
well, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
That's a tall order.
Yeah. Well, to start, and we were talking a little bit about this off camera, but to start, I wanted to dive in to what I'm sure a lot of people who know you know this, but some of the people who don't know you may not know this, that you are like an incredible musician and singer and artist. And we were talking a little bit about that, but I wanted to open up with just asking, like, what does music mean to you? Like, what's your journey been like in that world with working through your art and living that out, and what does music mean to you?
Oh, we were just talking about it upstairs.
Yeah.
Music is kind of my release, and it can change my entire day. It's my go-to when I have shows. It's kind of my me time. You know, I'm mom. I work, but that's kind of my me time. It's, I just feel it. I feel the music. We discussed how not everybody even hears the music. They don't hear the lyrics, but if the music's on, I can't not listen to it. Yeah. I can't sleep when there's music on because it just doesn't stop. I just want to hear it all. So yeah, that's kind of always been my release. Even when Ava was sick, and, you know, I obviously wasn't doing shows at that time, but it's always just been a huge part of my life. Since I was little, I remember that's what I wanted for Christmas was CDs. Or before that, it was like I was the person waiting on my song to come on the radio so I could hit record on the cassette tape. Like, that was 100% me. I wore out CDs. I wore out tapes. It's just always been a huge part of my life.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's amazing how and this is something we're obsessed with. As we were talking to Natalie, it's like why we have the heart on fire, like, as part of our logos, because to us that represents like passion for the things you love in life, and that's what's ultimately drawn and guided us to being on the path we're on now, is our immense passion for it. But it's so cool to talk to so many people who have these passions for all these different areas of life. And I know Austin, and I know you guys were chatting about this, but Austin is an avid musician himself, and it's so cool. He's opened me up to a lot of like world of music, but particularly finding that emotional connection, that driving, like, powerful connection, how it can actually like influence your physical body even.
Oh, absolutely. On the way here, I was listening to a song And I realized that it was one of the saddest songs I've ever heard. It has the most beautiful melody to it. And I was like, I need to switch it, because it was changing my mood. And I'm like, I don't need that going into me. And so I found some Blink 182 and I listened to it.
You jammed out to all the small things.
Yes.
I love it. Yeah.
My daughter, I have her obsessed. That's her new favorite band.
Oh, that's great. That's a good one.
For school, the only thing she wanted for the first day was a Blink 182 t-shirt. I'm like, you got it.
Yep.
She wanted the Nurse. That's what she wanted. And I was like, I can't let you do that, 8-year-old child. I'm sorry. So we had to find an age-appropriate, school-appropriate shirt, but we found it.
That's awesome. That's so cool, because it's like, you're like, hey, this is a gift I'm excited to give you.
Oh, completely. 100%. Yes, it was so cool.
Yeah, that's so cool. So when did you first discover your love for music? Like, when did you discover you had this love and ability to sing, and what did that journey look like?
I grew up in the church singing in the choir, and I'm talking junior choir, 6 years old. I remember doing a solo with a friend. We do have videotape evidence of this somewhere. But it was always what I just loved. Like, I loved getting on stage. I loved singing. Who knows what I really sounded like as a 5 and 6 year old child. I'm blessed that I can carry a tune, because it's just always been a part of me. I remember in my room, I feel awful for my parents thinking back, because I would sing at the top of my lungs in my room. And it's not like we were in a different level of the house. Okay. It was a ranch style house. So they heard it all, but it's just always been everything to me. It just gravitates to me. It's what I wanted to do. And I'm blessed that it's not a huge, money-making career, but I'm so blessed that I get to do that.
Yeah. Well, it's like beyond just like the financial side of what it can do. It sounds like it's given you like you said it emotionally, like a release. It gives you that release. And I know that I feel that for powerlifting, like to my core, I feel like that. Like, we were laughing, I got to wear this heart monitor since I had some issues here a month ago. And, it was funny. They told me, they're like, well, you can just not like go to the gym for a month. And I was like,
that's not an
no,
option.
I can't. Like, that's not, you don't understand. That's not an option. And I think it's, we all have these things that we're just drawn to in life. And what amazes me is it's like, everybody has these things, so many people that think like, oh, I'm just this normal person. Like, there's nothing special about me. There's, nothing I have that's different or cool. Like, yes, you do. Like, you've got these things that like call to you, that you're drawn to. And we believe that's like the beginning of finding these passions for life. And ultimately they can serve you in so many ways, and you can find so much value and worth in those. But not only that, it allows you to open up and serve others through those gifts or those passions or those talents. And you can affect so many others. And I know you've been a shining example of how you can do that in your own life. It's
just part of your story, and it's part of accepting, like, music is part of my story. And I didn't always know that, but through music, my musical partner, Justin, I was playing already with him. We've played together for 16 years now, but that's Desney's brother.
Oh, really?
Yeah. That's how I met Desney.
Oh my gosh.
Him and I played Bridget's benefit.
Oh my gosh.
And that was the first day I met Desney.
So was this, because I don't know the timeline fully. Had you had Ava at this point?
I had Ava.
Okay.
And when I met Desney, it was at the Marietta Brewing Company. We played the benefit for free, raising money for Bridget. And I went up to her and I hugged her and I said, I cannot imagine what you're going through. I'm so sorry. And it was within months that Ava was diagnosed.
Oh my gosh.
And that's part of my story, and so now I'm so close with Desney, and I still play music with Justin. He's one of my best friends, and it's, who would have wrote that,
It's amazing to see how just like the universe can align in those ways.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like, what are the chances? What are the odds? And like you would have never known how crucial of a meeting that could have been, but it was your gift and your art that brought you there.
It was part of the story. Yeah.
Wow, that's unbelievable. So how old were you when you had Ava?
I was 22, I believe.
Okay.
When I had Ava.
Okay.
I was pretty young.
How old was Ava when she was your first child, correct?
Yes.
Okay, I thought so. And how old was she then when you would have met Desney at the benefit?
She would have been probably had just turned 4.
Okay. Okay, so you weren't like a new parent at that point.
No. It was within like a month, maybe a year that Ava was diagnosed.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. So, yeah, I had Ava at 22, 23, and she was 4 when she was diagnosed. Mm-hmm. 4.5, probably. Closer to 4.5 when she was diagnosed. It was March 23rd. So, yep.
That's very close to the time of year. Like when I was diagnosed, I know different years, different time points. It was that February going into March for me. And I know that like when you become a parent, especially like a new parent, like your first child, like this was something I wasn't used to be able to speak to. And now it's like, I feel like I can speak to it so clearly, just that feeling and how I don't like to personally say that it changes your whole life. I've always said that it like enhances your whole life.
Right.
Like everything you do now has infinitely more meaning than it ever did before.
Yes.
And I think that's just such a like one of the coolest things I've ever experienced. And so I know that can be like a very powerful time period in your life. And I can't speak yet to whether that like changes as you go through life or not. I know you can, because your kids are growing up so fast now, but so you met Desney when Ava was 4 years old and had to face this. And I know that this is already something that's like so hard to face. You know, you see another parent going through a tragedy like that, and you think like, oh my gosh, like I can't imagine what that would be like.
And that's just something you say.
Yeah.
You know, it's just an automatic thing. You're like, I can't imagine.
Yeah. But I mean, I think it's like the reality too. Like at the time you can't,
right.
Like it's hard to even think like, what would that be like? And it just makes you sick to even think about.
Mm-hmm.
And then little did you know, 4 months later, you would be facing a very similar thing.
Yeah.
So Ava was 4 years old when she was diagnosed with childhood cancer.
Yeah.
What type of cancer did she have?
So she was diagnosed with DIPG, which is a brain tumor that is located in your brainstem. However, it's not a solid tumor. Okay. So she had always been a very healthy kid. Mm-hmm. She was our only child at the time. We had actually been trying for quite a while to get pregnant again, because every night all she prayed for was a baby brother or sister.
Yeah.
You know, some things God definitely has a hand in, because I look back and compared to when we started trying, I would have been due about the time that she was diagnosed. Mm-hmm. So It's a blessing looking back that it didn't happen right away. But she was always a healthy child. Never had any big issues with her. You know, your typical bronchitis every now and then as a baby, and then she was fine. It was probably a Thursday or a Friday. We took her out to eat at a restaurant, and I saw her eye turn in. 4-year-old, and I was like, huh, what was it? It didn't stay in. Mm-hmm. It went back, you know, and I was like, she's learning to cross her eyes, you know.
Yeah.
But it was enough that there was like a mommy red flag that I was like, oh, okay, all right. By Sunday, we had gotten her first big girl bed. Like, she had had a toddler bed, crib and a toddler bed, you know, and we got her first big girl bed. And it was her room was upstairs, and we were taking her up to see her new big girl bed, and she crawled up the stairs. And I was like, what is that about? and she went to get on the bed, and she couldn't jump on the bed. It was like her coordination, her everything had just gone. And I was like, why are you crawling? And she's like, I don't know. And nothing was hurting. She wasn't complaining about a single pain in her body whatsoever. It just, something wasn't right. Like, all of a sudden, her balance was very, very off. And I remember telling my husband that night, I said, we've got to take her she's going to the doctor. She's going to her pediatrician tomorrow. And once again, it's not something you ever think your kid is going to have. You know, you never think it's going to be my kid. But I said that night to him, I'm afraid it's a brain tumor. And he looked at me like I had 7 heads. Like, what? That's insane. Right? And mommy gut, I'm telling you, it is a real thing. And I always tell the parents, that mother instinct, I knew something was seriously wrong. I had no reason to think she had a brain tumor except for the past 24 hours. So yeah, we took her to her doctor, her pediatrician, Dr. Daly. Love her, and it's amazing that we had such a good relationship with her. You hear so many horror stories, Destiny's being one of them, where it takes so long to find a diagnosis and everything. We took her in, and I did not even finish saying the symptoms, and Dr. Daly was out the door on the phone with Children's Hospital. Like, she saw it, she knew it. It was an immediate go to Children's. So I'm very blessed that we didn't have that imbalance of months of trying to figure out what the diagnosis is.
Because with that type of cancer, well, any type of cancer, time is of the essence.
Time is of the essence.
It
Absolutely.
really, truly is. And
But I mean, we went to Children's, and they had done a CAT scan down here. They sent us to the ER here first, did a CAT scan. Something's there. That's about all you get from a CAT scan. We're like, okay. So we go up to Children's, and they do the MRI, and they come back, and I told him it was our neurosurgeon at the time. Well, he hadn't done it yet, but he knew he was going to be. He was in the room. He is the one who gave us the official diagnosis that it is a brain tumor. We believe it is DIPG, and it's not operable, and there's a 0% chance of survival. And my husband and I both, I don't know how many times we asked the same question in different ways. Like, it did not make sense to me at the time that it was not operable. I mean, you do brain surgeries all the time. Like, what do you mean it's not operable? Okay, she has cancer, take it out. And it just did not comprehend in my head at the time that it's not operable. There's nothing they can do. It turns out with this type of tumor, it's intertwined. It's not a solid tumor. And because of its location, it's everything that controls your breathing, and it controls your heartbeat, and it's the vital parts of living that it controls. So if you go in and try to cut it out and you hit anything, it just can't be done. Yeah. It's intertwined in the entire tumor. So, you're kind of on autopilot at that time. You're hearing the words, but you're not comprehending them. However, they tell us it's a 0% chance, 6 months max is what we have. And so we asked for a second opinion, because at this time they hadn't gone in, they hadn't done a biopsy. We do get told that there is the slightest of chances that it is a different type of tumor. If that's the case, it's still a very low % chance of survival, but it's a completely different regimen for treatment. And so they told us how incredibly risky it was to go in and even do a biopsy because of the location. We knew that we could have lost her on the table right then. But we felt like we had to at least try that, because what if it's one that has a 10% chance of survival, and I choose the wrong treatment, and it's all because of that. So we decided to do the biopsy, and that's when her neurosurgeon is the one who told us, it's definitely DIPG. And that's when we had a quick decision to what kind of treatment. They said, we can keep her here and we can do the initial treatment that we would give anybody, but it's not going to work. It's not going to work. So we asked for a second opinion. We wanted to look at clinical trials, and I believe we got a second opinion from Cleveland Rainbow Babies and St. Jude. And at this time, like, I haven't eaten, I haven't slept, I'm not hungry. Like, you're just airplane mode, survival mode. But we had about 24 hours to decide, what are we doing, especially if we were going to St. Jude or not, because it was the last spot in their clinical trial, and we had to decide. And if that's the case, you're headed down there for about 8 weeks. We ended up, they somehow connected us with somebody who had been to St. Jude, and they told us that it's like Disneyland for sick kids. At the time, I couldn't picture that. Mm-hmm. But speaking to Dr. Bronisher, which was her doctor down at St. Jude, speaking to him, he was from Brazil and he has an amazing accent. I could have talked to him forever. But he just gave me some hope. It was a phase 1 trial, so it still wasn't great, but at least it was better than what I was hearing nothing was going to do. So we decided to go to St. Jude. And I cannot say enough amazing things about St. Jude. We had amazing treatment at Nationwide Children's. They worked with us even as we were St. Jude patients throughout her 2 years. We were able to do scans eventually at St. Jude and every other at Children's, so we didn't have to travel quite as much. They were always there if I had a question. Love Nationwide Children's. But St. Jude has a special place in my heart. Yeah. So everybody knows, okay, you don't have to, you'll never get billed for treatment there, but it is so much more than that. So they have a place called the Grizzly House that is essentially a hotel, and it's in the parking lot of the hospital in Memphis. And they put you up there free of cost for any short-term stay. So initially that's where we were. That is actually where we met another family with a child who had DIPG, and we became family friends with them, and our kids got to know each other and everything. His name was Espen. So they set you up in the Grizzly House. Because we were staying longer, they put us up in the Target House. So the Target House, it's a little bit of a drive away, but there's 2 Target houses, and completely made and sponsored by Target store. It's 2-bedroom apartments for the families. Oh, wow. For free. Yeah. So we had our own 2-bedroom apartment for the whole time we were down there doing radiation. The first floor is all like celebrity themed rooms. There was an Amy Grant music room. There was a Shaun White gaming room. There was a Brad Paisley game room with like pool table and stuff. Pretty much nightly, the community would come in and make meals for everybody, and you could go down and get your food, and local churches and stuff. St. Jude gave us a $100 Kroger gift card every week just to go get groceries. And I'm like, people don't know about this stuff. Yeah. They just do so much more than the treatment. They go above and beyond. The people at St. Jude, they really do live, eat, and breathe what they do. She ended up having a seizure closer to the end that left her unable to move her arms and her legs. So she ended up having to have a special wheelchair. St. Jude got it for us. They're just so much more than people really know, and I want people to know how amazing.
That's awesome. I'm really glad you shared that perspective on St. Jude, because I've never really known a lot about St. Jude's. I knew they were an option. It was between them and Nationwide. Like when I had my cancer, I knew they were an option, but we ended up going with Nationwide because we felt really good with them, and they were 2 hours away as opposed to like
9 hours away.
9 or 10 hours, in case something went wrong. Yeah. Which, thank God, because something did go wrong. But yeah, I'd never really known a lot about St. Jude's. The only thing I've really known is I see their commercials a lot. And I'll be honest, I've said before, like, I don't always love the commercials because they tend to show a lot of really sad, sick, kind of like broken down kids. And I know that is the reality sometimes, but we've always focused on the side of like, man, these kids are so strong and so vibrant. And so I've never really like had that connection in my brain, but again, I've only ever seen the commercials. So it's amazing to hear that perspective that like they do that. Like that's unbelievable. And you think about like they did that for you guys, and to think they're doing that for thousands, tens of thousands, however many other patients and families. And it's like, that's unbelievable.
It's unbelievable
to think about sustaining an operation like that.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. That's incredible. I'm really glad to hear that like that is the level of their organization.
Yeah. And that was, I don't know how many years ago. I can only imagine what they do now,
Yeah. That's incredible. So you go to Nationwide, correct, where you got the initial diagnosis.
Right.
And then you went to Cleveland and St. Jude's for outside opinions and perspectives, which we are always big fans of that. Like Austin's done that, I've done that for a few of the things I've battled with after chemo, because it never hurts and it's always good.
I found it very hard. I told him upstairs, I found it very hard to ask for a second opinion. I did not want to offend her doctors that I loved at Nationwide. They seemed pretty confident that's what it was, but I didn't feel like I had at that moment, I didn't have my mom voice yet necessarily. Throughout 2 years of treatment, you find your mom voice, and you very much realize that I'm my only kid's advocate, and it's okay when I have to speak up. But at that time, it was just still too new. But I found it very hard. But they were so sweet about it. They were like, "No, we will get you the numbers. We will reach out. We'll send them everything." So they put my mind at ease a lot.
Yeah, and that's good that they did that, because it does happen out there. I think it's increasingly more rare, but you do see that from time to time where there are some healthcare providers that think, "Oh no, I'm right. Like this is what it is," and they, people can get offended when you question them or their expertise or their knowledge, but. Yeah, I don't think you would ever experience that at Nationwide Children's or St. Jude's, it sounds like. And like you said, like, if somebody's going to get upset about you asking for a second opinion, they probably shouldn't be your doctor.
Yeah, that's kind of a red flag in itself.
Yeah.
And I realized that later. It was just at the time. I was younger.
But there's so much happening. You're young. You've probably never been faced with a major medical situation like this before in any respect. So there's so much going on. It would be so hard to take everything in. I do want to go back a little bit, because I feel like most of the stories we've brought on this show, including mine and Austin's, like that moment of diagnosis is always a very powerful moment. But I've never heard a moment before where there's just no options presented. And like, this is what it is. 0% chance of survival. There are no options. And I can't imagine like how do you, because it's hard enough to face it when there are options, but at least in that case there's a path forward. How do you begin to wrap your mind around that when at least initially you were presented with there is no path forward?
Like I said, I couldn't wrap my mind around it. What do you mean you can't operate? What do you like I had already had in my head, she has a brain tumor. Like that was already registering with me before we even got there. I thought that, but it never crossed my mind that you can't do anything about it. Like that might.
Yeah,
my daughter's going to die.
You don't hear that too much anymore, honestly.
No.
And it's good that you don't hear that anymore.
And it's still like that to this day with DIPG. You still cannot, there is still no cure for DIPG.
What does DIPG stand for?
Oh, I knew you were going to ask me. Diffused intristic pontine glioma.
Okay, so it's a glioma. Wow.
Yeah.
And so it just like, so for those of you listening, like it sounds like it's just something that striates through the brainstem.
Yes.
And because of that, it's inoperable, because it's not like a mass you can just go in and cut around the edges and take out.
It's not a genetic thing. There's no rhyme or reason. It literally comes down to one of those. There was a bad cell that her immune system didn't take care of. Because, initially as a parent, you're like, what did I do wrong? Yeah. What could I have done differently? Is it a gene? Is it my fault? Is it, I don't care how many times they told me that there was nothing I did or nothing I could have done. You still go through that for months and years and years. Heck, today I still wonder, you know, maybe we just don't know what the cause is, but there was something.
It would be impossible to ever escape that thought, I think.
They told me, and they said it was purely physical, like the symptoms that she saw or that I saw from her. That's the initial appearance of, you know, of the diagnosis. I don't believe that. I definitely saw a difference in my child before that, and I brought this to their attention, and they were like, no, that shouldn't have been the case. But Ava had always been an incredibly happy child. Angel child, I'm talking, like easy baby, easy child growing up, didn't throw fits, like she was very, very easy. And I would say she was diagnosed in March, early winter probably. Before that, I saw a change in her personality. I look back at pictures and I could see it. We have a sled riding picture that just looking, she looks like just gone, blank in her eyes. She had just started acting out, saying things that she would never do before. Of course, she was my first child, so I'm like, how do I deal with this? How do you discipline your child? And, you know, she's 4, but it had gone so much that I had researched child depression and bought a book that came about a few weeks after her diagnosis, that came in the mail about how to deal with unruly children and depression in kids. And that book came in the mail, and I just threw it away. I was like, it made me sick that I was even thinking that, because I know that it was the tumor that was changing her personality. Well, I think it makes
sense. Like, the brain is the central control hub for everything, you know?
Right.
And I mean, it's, you know, like thoughts, emotions, feelings, physical connection. Like, the brainstem specifically is one of the like main connection points between the brain and the body. Like,
right.
It's what gives us like conscious control over the body and autonomic control. I mean, it's just, and that's again why I would see that they couldn't go in and operate it, because the chance of cutting like absolutely vital, essential things is so high.
Your breathing,
everything,
your heartbeat,
everything, and things that we don't even understand.
Right.
You know, connections we don't even know that are there. That's wow. It's hard to not like think about like what would it be like to be in that position. And it's just, you know, like I say, it's a perspective that we've never encountered before, where there really is no path forward, but somehow you guys were still able to find a path forward in the midst of all that. And a lot of that sounds like it started from, you know, getting outside opinions.
Yeah.
And so I guess I would ask, like, for somebody who's facing that scenario, like what is the path forward?
You know, everybody has their own way. I said before, there's no right or wrong way of how to do this as a cancer parent. You don't get the book that actually explains it, because every single journey is different. I was raised in the church. I rely on a lot of my faith. Initially, while we were still at Nationwide, I was angry, so angry with God. Why would you do this? Why? And a friend pastor that had known me my whole life showed up. Didn't ask him to come, but he showed up and he talked to us, and he was, he kind of gave me my way. He said, God didn't do this to your baby. The sins of the world and Satan did this to your baby. God is your way through this. And I'm like, that's what I needed to hear. Like, because I was done. I was losing my faith. The same day of Ava's diagnosis, we were trying to call our best friend to let him know what was going on. Best man at our wedding, everything. And it was later in the night. We were in the hospital room for the first night, and my husband got a phone call. It turned out it was from his sister. They had found him passed away from a brain aneurysm that day. I personally believe that he took her place that day. I think she probably was not supposed to be there, and he took her place that day because there was no reason to think that would have happened. So I just believe God was there. God has always been there with me. Even when I didn't feel it, I believe her Uncle Steve is what we called him. Mm-hmm. He was always there with us, and he helped us through it.
That's, again, you can't put words to those moments in life. And it's like, whatever you believe, it's proof that there is like something.
There's
happening.
more. There's something.
Happening.
Yeah.
Even if we don't understand in any capacity, like what it is, but it's just really hard to like turn away from those moments in life. So you guys then went, how long did it take to turn? I assume it probably was a pretty quick process. Did it feel like
to
a
St.
whirlwind?
Jude?
Yeah.
Oh,
to get
it was
to St.
definitely.
Jude's?
I think we were down there within 72 hours.
Wow.
Because it had to be, because it was a clinical trial at St. Jude, you couldn't start any treatment up here and then still join the clinical trial. So, I mean, they had done, I think they started her on the steroids, but that was it up here. So we had to quickly get down to St. Jude and get everything started. So she ended up having an oral chemo.
Okay.
And then she did 6 weeks of radiation down at St. Jude. The radiation, I mean, first of all, the steroids are just, they're awful. I mean, they do their job by all means. It's the whole point is to reduce swelling and all that, which she had tons of. But they are a beast all of their own. You're starving, first of all, always hungry, so irritable, everything. And then because she was so young for radiation, she had to be put under every single day for 6 weeks.
Gosh.
So you can't eat before you get put under, but yet we're going to give you steroids that make you really hungry and irritable. It was a beast all of its own. We found out, they said at the very beginning, it's like a cocktail of putting anesthesia medicine. We'll find the right dose that she wakes up easily, she wakes up happy. So it took a few times of figuring it out, but by gosh, they figured it out where it was much easier. Oreos was her one thing that she wanted as soon as she woke up. So by golly,
you
we
guys
had
kept Oreo in
Oreos.
business. Yeah.
Whatever you want.
Yeah.
But yeah, we did the radiation down there, and then the oral chemo, which was, we essentially did that for 2 years. Okay. She passed away 10 days short of 2 years of her diagnosis. Wow. So, March 13th. So March is a really cruddy month. Yeah. But we had the chemo, so I was able to give that to her every night at home. Obviously, I never tasted it, but I was told that it was horrible tasting. And you have to keep it down for so long. And so it became a trial and error of what can I mix it in that she will eat it. It's covered up enough that she'll eat it, but not give her, like, we found chocolate pudding. That was what worked the most, but not a whole cup of chocolate pudding just because she was nauseous because of it. So the chance of her keeping a whole cup of chocolate pudding down was slim. So, how little can I get away with a chocolate pudding?
Just enough to cover up the taste, but not.
So it was a big trial and error thing, but I was lucky at least that I was able to do that at home, and she wasn't in the hospital for all of her chemo because it was every single day. I got very good at traveling with the chemo through airports. It's light sensitive, so it was in special bottles, and it couldn't go through the X-ray machine. And this was post 9/11, so it was fun getting through the airports with that. But I got very good at that because we would fly down to St. Jude for her scans after that. But yeah, we did the chemo for almost 2 years. After she had the seizure, she had gotten most of her mobility back after the radiation, because the radiation did really well. It really shrunk the tumor. But we were told that was temporary, So she got most of her mobility back. She was able to use, it was her right and left side, or right side that she had lost initially. And so with therapy and everything, she was walking again. And we have an Ava tattoo. It's the first time she wrote her name again after after getting that back. So, but whenever everything started growing again, she started losing that. And then shortly before she passed, she had a seizure and kind of lost all that mobility. She lost the mobility. She lost her ability to talk. And the last good 6 months of her life was kind of like that.
Wow, that's just an unbelievable journey. And so St. Jude's was actually able, initially you said, correct, that they thought she had like 6 months to live from diagnosis.
Yeah.
And she ended up making it just barely, pretty much 2 years.
2 years, yeah.
Yeah. So St. Jude's was able to offer at least some level of treatment, it sounds like, in the form of a clinical trial. Why, and maybe there's not even an answer to this, but why was like radiation and chemotherapy not an option at like other facilities?
The radiation would have been the same. Okay. The radiation would have been the same if we had done it anywhere else. It was mainly the chemo. It was just the clinical trial of what it was. It was a new type of chemo that we were able to work with her.
That may somehow be able to selectively target that area. See, that would be the other difficult thing, because if you have like a solid tumor like I had, or even other forms of non-solid tumors like Austin has, you can give chemo that attacks fast-growing cells throughout your body and kill everything observable back, and do other interventions from there if and when needed. But being mixed in your brainstem like that, I would think that would be the tricky part as well, because just like cutting it out, if you're trying to kill those cells, like, you don't know what you're killing, and everything there is vital.
The way it was explained to us is, that's what chemo does, is it attacks the cells, right, and kills off the bad cells. The brainstem and the brain, there's a protective barrier, is essentially what it is. So getting any type of medicine that could even get to the tumor is the biggest problem.
Yeah.
So that's what this clinical trial, it was just a different type of, chemo that is trying to break through that barrier to get to the tumor.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So she did, you said 6 weeks of radiation.
Right. Yeah.
And then was she doing oral chemo like basically the entire time of that?
Every night.
Every night. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. And again, as you brought up, there's so many challenges, particularly for pediatric cancer, that like we don't even think about in the adult world. Like at an adult age, you're old enough to recognize, like, hey, I've got to take this medicine. It doesn't taste good, but I got to get it down. Mm-hmm. It's much harder to explain that to a 4-year-old.
It's very hard. Going back to there's no right or wrong way to handle it. She hadn't known anybody with cancer. Yeah. We never said the C word to her. We never told her she had cancer. She decided in Nationwide Children's Hospital, I said, that there's something in your head that is not supposed to be there. She looked at me and she's like, it's a frog. And I'm like, literally my reaction, like pretty much the last thing I expected her to say. And I'm like, yep, totally. And from then on out, it was a frog. She's got a frog in her head. We had the port put in up at Nationwide. It was her bump. That's what she called it. Like, okay, that's what when she needed to get accessed, her bump needs a drink. She's giving her bump a drink. Like, we let her decide what lingo we were using, and that's what worked for us. It made it not scary for her, and nothing wrong with however other people do it, but that is just what worked for her. She came back home and everybody knows her. She had no idea why, she doesn't know she's the cancer kid. She just, she's like, thanks, hi. She didn't get it because it was just, we tried to keep it as normal as possible for her.
Well, I think that's great, and there's a lot of wisdom to that. And I think you're right, though. Like, everybody's got to find their path forward, and that's, for anybody who's been through this, I'm sure they feel the exact same way. It's like, it's just, as you said, it's such a unique journey every single time.
Yeah. That
you can't assign a right and wrong to it, but it just never ceases to amaze me, the mind of a child. Oh. Like, just total confidence.
Yeah.
It's a frog.
It's a frog.
Just like that level of imagination is just, there's a beauty to that.
There is.
There really is. And
I don't know if it's because it was kind of around the time that Princess and a Frog came out, which it turns out that people who worked on the movie heard about all that. She ended up getting all this stuff from Disney, a signed poster from them with like the directors and the writers and everything. Oh, wow. And it was her frog. So
that is amazing. That's it's moments like that like, to me, it's like just the fighting spirit and the imagination and the beauty of a child is just it's words can't describe it. They can't. And it's interesting you bring that up, because that was going to be my next question, is like, how do you even go about, do you explain this to the child? Do you not explain? Like, what does the process of that look like? And I really think there's a lot of wisdom in your approach there, is like, let her decide the terms of her own journey, and it doesn't have to make logical sense, and it doesn't have to, it doesn't have to be this big ordeal necessarily, but just let her, decide how this will go.
It is. Each child is different. Each journey is different. Maybe your child has somebody who knows that's had cancer, and it's going to be twice as scary if you say that C word. That's one of the first things I say to the BrAva parents when I talk to them is, there's no right or wrong way to do this. There's no right or wrong decision, because at the end of the day, you're making the decision that's best for your child. Nobody else knows them like you are. Yeah. So whatever you decide, it's right.
Yeah. And I think that piece you touched on earlier of that parental instinct is so huge. It's funny, I was actually talking to Lauren about that the other day. I was like, it's amazing to me, like, how well we know this baby. Like, we can look at her and instantly know she's hungry, she's tired, like all those things, and I just like know it, and there's no question in my brain. But I was like, I don't even know how I know that. I just know it, from just like the slightest little cues that like you would never pick up in somebody else, and somebody else would never pick up in your baby, and it's wild. I actually brought her because, we're blessed to have a good relationship with the cancer center here in town, and just so many, I mean, obviously they don't, they're like totally different practice than like something like St. Jude's, but still the people there have just unbelievable hearts of gold. And so we bring Lily by so they can see her and everything. And
she's so cute.
Oh man, she's just everything in life. But it's wild, you see all these other people interact with your baby. It's like immediately like 10 different things. It's like, no, you got to hold her like this, and she doesn't like this, and she loves this. And it's so funny just how much personality and uniqueness they have.
And you know them. And I always tell parents that. I'm like, they might not have had the fever for as long as protocol says they should have had it before you go to the doctor. If something's wrong, and you are their only voice. When they're that little, you are their only voice. I am so not a confrontational person, but I definitely found my voice while she was in treatment. I'm somebody who will give them 100 chances to, I give you lots of grace, except when it comes to my kid. And Mama Bear came out a couple times, like maybe they were trying to access her port, and this woman definitely, she says she knew how to do it. But after 3 sticks, you know what? I'm going to speak up finally and be like, no, you don't get to touch my kid again. Yeah. You need to go find somebody else. And that's totally against my personality. But as a parent, it came pretty natural.
Yeah, you have to be that advocate for them.
Yeah, and it's okay to do that. It's okay.
Right,
You don't have to do it rudely, but that's your job. That's your job as the parent.
Yeah. Well, Natalie, who you just met before this, and I think you guys would get along so well. Like she's also just such an incredible person like you. But she was telling us a story about how, like, because I think at first she was a little bit the same way, but she was the parent that, like, took as much control as possible, and that, like, is what gave her a path forward. Is I'm going to make sure every med's document, everything is good to go. But she got to the point where, because her son had leukemia, which is like a 3-year long process they go through, and she got to the point where she could access sports better than pretty much any nurse could, and with, like, no medical training. But there was one time they were in a local ER where the nurse, like, pushed the needle in to access it, missed, pulled it back out, and then used the same needle, pushed it right back in. And I know when we heard that was our reaction too, and we just, like, we wanted to throw up for a second, because it's like ANC 0 at that time. It's like, oh my gosh. And so it's just things like that you just you can't even imagine. But it is wild how you, not just as a parent but as a person, you can fundamentally, like, you just develop these skills and these abilities and this knowledge overnight, just because, like, that's your whole world right there. And it's amazing what that can bring out within you, when it has to. But I think you're absolutely right. Like, you have to be an advocate for your child. But I also like what you say about, like, even at 4 years old, like, I was fortunate that I had parents who let me make basically all of my treatment decisions and by myself. And, I'd talk with them and, talked with a lot of people, get input and decisions and things like that. But I was 17 at the time, getting ready to turn 18. But, for a 4-year-old, it's not always easy to, like you have to advocate for them. But I do think it's incredibly important, like you said, to let them have a voice in the process, whatever that looks like.
Yeah.
And I think that would have been so powerful for her, and had to be so powerful for her, just to be able to say, it's a frog.
It's a frog.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it is the difference of the younger kids, and I deal with that with BrAva a lot, because my only experience is with a young child who had cancer, and you're convincing them that every single night they have to take this terrible tasting medicine that they don't. And I mean, it turned into, I would do anything to distract her just to get this medicine. You want to read a book? Okay, every page we got to take a bite. And whatever game you want to play, like, whatever it took. But through BrAva, I've met more and more older kids that have the say, and it's, neither one is better, because as a younger child, I was able to influence my kid, and I could shelter her from what I wanted her to know and didn't want her to know. But it was hard because she didn't understand why she had to take the medicine. Well, then with an older kid, they get it. And that's a whole different type of scary. My daughter never once asked me, am I going to die? That never crossed her mind. And as an older child, that's on their mind. Yeah. And I'm blessed that I didn't have to handle that part of it. I was telling him about how they both suck. There's no good or bad. The family that we met at St. Jude, we were sitting in the radiation room with the parents. Both of our kids are getting radiation at the same time for the same disease. We both know the outcome. And they tell me that they have an older daughter back home in Pennsylvania. And I looked at him and I was like, I can't imagine leaving one of my children for this long. And he looked at me, he's like, I can't imagine this happening to your only child. And it was like the realization of, you're right. Neither one's better than the other. They're both awful.
Yeah, that's what we've said, is like because we have, especially recently since doing this series, we've realized there kind of is a distinction between that, and there's no clear line for it, but that, like, adolescent young adult versus like pediatric little kid, that, like, there are, and we've said the same thing, like, one is not better than the other. They are just different challenges,
right?
Totally different worlds. And you know, it's just one of those things, like you have to figure out your situation as it is, and that there are no right answers. And in some ways, I think it's hard to hear that there are no right answers, but I think at the same time, it can be empowering in that there's no wrong answers either. Like,
right.
You have to rely on that instinct and move forward with what you think is best in that given moment. And, you know, you like, that can empower you, at least in a way that, like, I just trust in who I am and who I know my kid is. And if I put their intentions, or if I put them at like my highest intention, like what's best for them is my highest intention, then at the end of the day, you know, that's the right answer.
That's the right answer. Yeah.
So,
and I've kind of carried that through, that whole thinking through with the grieving process. Because we've lost at least numerous kids through BrAva, and it's not something I ever thought I would have to be there for somebody for, but I'm honored that I'm able to. I've been to funerals to our BrAva kids. I've tried to never miss a funeral, but where I've never even met the parents. I've spoken with them. I've never met the kid, but I've talked about them with their parents. But I want them to know that somebody's there, and so I go, and it's the same thing. There's no right or wrong way to handle it. You know, you do what you have to do because you don't have a choice.
Yeah. And that was something, you know, I wanted to ask you about as well, because this is something that, you know, while we were again talking with this about this with some of our other guests, is life can present these tragedies, just things you would never imagine, you would never wish on anyone else, but yet they can be a part of life. And we've often felt that, like, the way to work through that is to find some way to create purpose and meaning for it. Like, find some way that, yes, this thing happened to me and it's awful and I would never wish it on anybody else, but if I can find a way to help someone else going through the same thing, then at least it allows me to do something beneficial with that experience,
right,
and positive with that experience. And in that way, it's like, you know, it's like Ava lives on through that, you know, like in spirit and within you guys. And that was kind of one of the things I wanted to ask is, like, how did you as a parent face the grieving process of working through this? And then in addition to that, how were you able to move on and develop this whole organization that now serves so many parents in the way that, like, you needed most in that time?
I quickly learned that there's no one way to grieve. My husband and I, while very happy, we handle things very differently. And I'm very much a realist, and he is a hopeful. We discovered that during her treatment, because at the very end, it was our last visit that we ever did to St. Jude. I knew what was happening. I knew it was coming, and I wanted to know what to expect, what's going to happen, what order, how bad is it going to get. He felt that if he even thought that, it was losing hope. So at our last visit, I made him and Ava leave the room, and I asked the doctor, I said, give it to me straight. I want to know everything, every bad thing that's coming. I didn't share it with him. I respected that he didn't want to do that. He didn't want to hear that. But that's just my way of dealing with it. I need to prepare as best I can, if there's any way to prepare, you know? And it's kind of the same thing with grief. We dealt with grief differently. I was very much I wanted to stay to myself. I wanted to stay inside. He is a busybody. He needed to get out and do things. Not necessarily in public, but he needed to be out in the garage working on something. I think I easily could have felt like he abandoned me, but I understood that that's how he needed to process. it's not how I wanted to process. And so we respected each other and how we had to deal with it. When it got bad enough, then we would talk about it and work our way through it. You don't want to, if your spouse is having a good day and you're not, you kind of feel bad bringing it up. You don't want to bring them back down. They're finally having a good day. So I'm blessed that I have a really, really good group of girlfriends, and I have an amazing mom and amazing family that if I didn't want to bog him down with it for that day, they would listen to me at any time. With that being said, I'm also not a big talker about it. I'm more of a, let me lock myself in the bathroom for an hour, good cry, and then, dust myself off and go. Because this is something I say to a lot of the BrAva parents is there is nothing to say. There's nothing anybody can say to me that's going to make me feel better. I understand that. So it's almost like there's nothing I can say that's going to change it. There literally are not words big enough for the pain and the anger and all of that. So I just believe in letting yourself have your feelings, but then always dusting yourself back off and getting back up. I never denied myself a good cry. Usually it comes when you least expect it. I mean, still to this day with grief, the most craziest random thing is what's going to make me upset. It's not the anniversaries necessarily. Those are coming. You kind of mentally prepare yourself for that. It's when you're out in a store and you hear Ava's favorite song or something that catches you off guard. But you just have to give yourself grace and let yourself feel that. It's okay to drop everything and walk out of the store and sit in your car and cry for a minute. Because I personally always felt a lot better after a good cry. But I would talk to anybody who wanted to talk about it with me at the time if that's what I needed. It's just the ebb and flow. It's a constant ebb and flow for the rest of your life. The waves of grief. How they say the waves are really strong at first and then they get farther and farther apart. Ava would be 19 now. It's been a few years. It doesn't hurt any less, but it does get easier to get through those big waves that come through because they're not hitting you every single day.
So just like with the initial diagnosis and the process, it sounds like there's not really any right way to grieve either.
There isn't.
What you need, because what I really latched onto there that you said is that there is nothing that will make it better, and there are no words big enough to describe it.
The biggest thing I remember from her viewing, God bless our amazing community. It was so many people that came out to show their support for her. But I eventually got to where people would walk up to me, and before I would let them say anything, I would say, I know there's nothing you can say. They'd give me a hug and would walk on. And I was like, that's how I needed to get through it, because there's nothing they could say, and you get tired of hearing the same thing.
I'm so sorry for your loss.
They mean the absolute best, and I so appreciate them for that. But I've realized in that moment that that's not what I wanted to hear. I didn't want them to try and, you can't fix it. I don't want you to try and say something to fix it. I appreciate your support. Give me a hug, and that's all you need to do as somebody trying to support someone who's grieving. That's what I kind of learned from that. And even to this day, when I walk up to them, anybody at a viewing or anybody at a funeral, I just give them a hug and I say, I know there's nothing I can say.
Yeah. And that is just, those times are so impossible.
Yeah.
Because, we've now been to, like the more we get involved in this space, and we're so thankful to be involved in this space and to be able to help people in any way we can. But there are the times where we've got to go to funerals.
Yeah. And I mean, I didn't expect this. Yeah. This wasn't what I had planned in my life to be that person. But, why this path was put in front of me, I don't know, but it was. And a big part of BrAva is keeping Ava's memory alive. One of the biggest things that I realized, not only I, as a parent of a, someone who's lost a child, is you're scared that they're going to be forgotten. That I know that was my biggest thing, that I didn't want people to forget her. She was such an amazing angel. I didn't want people to forget her. And that's why I always wanted to make sure I was at the funeral. And I know Desney mentioned how we always do Christmas cards and stuff. We send it to every child that was lost as well. And we send it to their parents. And I always write, never forgotten. And I've had more people mention those cards to me than kids that are going through treatment or anything. It's those parents that have lost a child and get that card, and they're like, "Thank you."
Yeah, that's. I'm really glad you shared that with us, because it's not something I would have, like, as soon as you say it, it makes sense in my brain, but it's not something I would have immediately thought, like, that fear of them being forgotten.
Yeah.
Like, that's not something I think anybody else would immediately recognize until you hear it. But as soon as you say it, like, it makes so much sense to me. And that's just, it's so good that there's organizations like BrAva out there and people like you who are doing that for others.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. And that I'm thankful to hear you say that, because now it gives us an additional insight into everything we go out and do, like how crucial that piece is. Mm-hmm. And it is hard, because, like you say, that, and so much better than me, like, they're just not words for a lot of these situations in life, but yet somehow we still have to find a path forward.
Yeah.
And I want to be respectful of your time, but there was one other thing I wanted to ask about, just because I know there's people out there who are in these situations themselves right now and need, a voice, or somebody with experience or voice to lean on, like, how do you do this? How do you work through this? And one of the things I had wondered, just now myself being a parent and thinking, like, one of the hardest things I would also think about this journey is, how did you guys go down the road of then having more kids? Because I would have to imagine that had to be a very hard part of that journey.
It's really funny. So today I had to go to the grocery store, and my daughter wanted to come along, and my Blink 182 kid, she's my music kid. So she was so excited to listen to music in the car. Well, I ended up telling her about coming down here today, and I was telling her, well, why are you doing that? And so I explained what the whole purpose is. We're raising awareness and everything. Somehow she got on the topic of when I got pregnant with her and her brother, and she knew that Ava always wanted a baby brother and sister. And so I had this entire conversation today with my daughter, and she wanted to hear the whole story of how it happened. Yeah. And I told her that, we had stopped trying after Ava got diagnosed. Obviously not a good time right now. Well, probably about a year into her treatment, that's all she was still asking for. And so I'm like, you know what? And so we started trying again. Mind you, with her, it happened quickly. There was not much trying to it. It was easy. And so I just assumed it would be like that. Well, you've dealt with infertility, and so that's what we were facing. I had been trying for 4 years, and it wasn't happening at this point. I was wondering if it ever would happen. She passed away, and I felt almost broken that I hadn't granted that request for her. I hadn't got to let her have a baby brother or sister. And all of a sudden, we were parents without a child. Wow. Like, she was our whole world. Everything I did, especially with her being sick, revolved around her. And then all of a sudden, what do you do? Like, what am I doing? You're just lost. You're very, very lost. Like I said, we have an amazing group of friends and family. Ava had amazing friends that were in that group. And she passed away at the end of March. Early on, beginning of May, we were going on a big camping trip. That was the plan. We were going on this big camping trip with our friend group. And my husband, David, told me, he's like, I don't even want to go. I don't even want to go. Like, we love all of our friend kids. But he's like, it just hurts. It just hurts because Ava should be there with them. I'm like, I know. I get it. And so the day we were supposed to be going, I got up and with 0 symptoms, I took a pregnancy test and it was positive. And I was so scared to tell him because, you know, false positive. Oh, dear goodness. Like, what if? Yeah. So my best friend works at a lab and I was like, I'm coming down. And I went down, blood test immediately. I was pregnant. And I got to go home, and here we're getting ready for this camping trip that we're trying to decide if we're really going on or not because he doesn't want to go at all. And I got to tell him that I was pregnant. And so it was about a month after she passed away that I got pregnant. And I fully believe that he was handpicked by her. I believe that the timing was exactly as it needed to be, even though that's not how I had wanted it to be. It's how it needed to be because I also have no regrets that she had all my love and she had all my attention. And I can only imagine going through, especially the end of the treatment with her while having a baby. I can't imagine doing that. So, I mean, it happened as it needed to happen. And I told my daughter today, I said, I remember praying that it was a boy because being so close, that feeling of replacements was just something that I couldn't fathom. It had to be a boy. Otherwise, I didn't know how I would be able to react. So it was a boy. Yeah. His name is Asen, and he is almost 12. But I'm also very much a girl mom. Okay, maybe it's because Ava was first. But ultimately it's because I'm a little bit more of a girly girl than I am, a tomboy. I knew I had to have another daughter. And again, we had trouble getting pregnant with her, but it happened. And when I found out it was a girl, I was like, that's it. That's what I needed. Yeah. And she came out and she looks so much like her sister. Really? She gets called Ava all the time.
Oh my gosh.
By tons of people, just on accident.
Yeah.
She looks so much like her.
Wow. Wow. That's amazing. And now they're growing up so fast.
Now they're growing up. I'll tell you, getting past the age of 4 was mentally hard. Getting past the age of 6 was mentally hard. I know Desney talked about the PTSD of it and everything, and it's legit. And I'm very blessed. I've had the opposite experience than Desney had with the mental health side of it. I know she, had to ask for the help. I felt like when Ava passed away, everybody thought I should be on meds. Like, it's just a given. You lost a child. You should be messed up. I didn't feel like I needed anything additional. I legit felt like what I was feeling is what I should be feeling. I shouldn't be happy right now, but I'm not so bad that I'm not, trying to process it. And so I have a doctor, and I went to him and I mentioned to him, they think I need something. And he was like, no, you don't. So it's literally the opposite of what Desney went through, because I needed that validation that, no, you're okay. And it's okay to need help, and it's okay not to need help. But it's like, I feel like what I'm feeling is pretty normal. So I'm really blessed that I had that doctor that said, it's okay. Yeah. It's okay to feel what you're feeling, as long as you are okay later on. And
and I think, just to be able to, for him to question that and say like, do you really though? And I'm like you, I think, again, this is an area where everybody's got to do what's best for them. Yeah. And there's no right answer, there's no wrong answer, but it's just the right answer is what's best for you. But one thing you said earlier that really stuck with me too, and I agree very heavily with this, is that we have to and we should feel our emotions, you know, and I think that whether, like, whatever that looks like for you, you know, it is going to be different, but we have to be able to feel those emotions. And I think really, you know, that's ultimately how we end up processing them. I view it as like a system. Like, you've got to be able to feel it and let it work its way through, and like you kind of said, tidal waves, you know, and let the ebb and flow come, and not that is the ultimate final answer and that alone fixes everything, but I do think, like, I've never seen like sadness or fear or anxieties like these things that we shouldn't feel.
Right.
Like, certainly, yes, they can become dysregulated in the brain, and, you know, then you approach it from a whole medical side. But I don't think they're things that we shouldn't feel. I think they're integral parts of being human, and we have to be able to embrace that just as much as the love and the happiness and
exactly
all of the emotions that we love, because I think one loses meaning without the other. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like you have to know true sadness to know happiness, you know, and it can be a spectrum, and you have to go through the peaks and the valleys, and again, that looks different for everybody in everybody's life, but I think your story is just, and Ava's story and your whole family's story is just an unbelievable testament of what people can face and how they can go through it with love and as much, like, you know, life as possible. And that's why I'm just so honored that you were able to, or that you were willing to come onto the show and talk to us about it, because again, as hard as it is to talk about some of these things, I'd be interested to know if, like, how your journey developed in this. But as hard as it is to discuss a lot of these things, I'm sure as hard as it is for you to have to go back and relive it and experience and bring up those memories, like, you know, there are people out there today that are living through that same thing right now. Mm-hmm. And at least for me, I've always found a lot of meaning. I've found a lot of meaning and purpose, and, like, well, it's not easy to talk about, it's hard to do, but if I can go back and just help one person going through that same thing, then at least I bring some good of it.
Right.
You know?
It's not like it's worth it type thing. That's not the case. No. It's, you know, it's the purpose that was put in front of me that I didn't choose, but it would have been nice to hear from somebody whenever Ava was sick. If I can do that, if I can be that one person, then it's something I need to do. And, you know, I mentioned before that upstairs when we were talking, that when I contact the BrAva family, a lot of the times they don't know who I am, and I give them my backstory. And it's opening it all up all over again every single time. It's letting them see the raw emotion, and the reason is so they know they're not alone. You can feel very alone, and you really don't understand it unless it's your baby. So I need them to know that I do get it, and the whole reason is so they know I'm here, and they won't hesitate to reach out to me. Which is not what BrAva started out the plan to be, you know?
Yeah, Disney was giving us a little of the backstory there. Yeah. And it's stuff that I didn't even know myself that I was amazed to learn about, but just how things can unfold.
Yeah. It started out with, we wanted to help financially. You know, hey, if we can help a family out, that's great. That was the only plan to begin with. But it turned into this emotional support system. You know, we've helped more than 70 families in the Mid-Ohio Valley. Wow. A lot of those we've adopted more than once due to, you know, their cancer coming back or a secondary cancer coming because of treatment. So, you know, we have a private page where we connect all the parents, and we pretty much tell them, look, this is open. You know, you guys get it. You understand how angry you can be sometimes, or just a silly little praise that nobody else would understand is such a big deal. You can go in here and this community gets it. You know, hey, my kid did this today. Nobody else would really care, but we're like, yeah, that's amazing. or ask crazy questions like, can my kids swim in a lake while doing chemo or with the port? Asking crazy things like that. Well, it's turned into this huge emotional support where sometimes the parents aren't looking for that support. That's okay. But sometimes they want it. And I've seen throughout the years these friendships form, not only with me, but just with the other parents, where they connect. And then some of our older BrAva kids we have on the page, maybe they're looking for another teen who is going through the same thing. So it's turned into this emotional side that I never expected to happen, but it's truly a blessing.
Yeah, it's just unbelievable what BrAva is doing. And you guys have been a huge inspiration for what got us started like last year, because initially this all started off as, I'm going to raise a marathon, or I'm going to run a marathon and raise a bunch of money for kids. And it was that same kind of thing of like, I'm going to run a marathon because it's hard, but I'm going to raise a bunch of money and help people. And then I think inevitably you go down this journey and you realize, like, yes, the financial side is so great, but what has the most impact on people, and not just like the impact, but like the immediate impact, like right now it helps them directly, is that emotional, mental, spiritual side of everything. And that's why we kind of evolved everything to centering it around, like giving kids hope and helping them see like how strong they are and how special they are and how amazing and incredible they are, and trying to build them up and empower them, like that's really kind of what it unfolded to for us. But it's kind of wild. I didn't even consider that, but it started out like as a financial thing for us, and now we've built, this whole thing around it, and it's like you say, you like didn't even know this purpose was right in front of you till you started walking down that path. But I did want to give you some time to say, like, just whatever you wanted to say about BrAva. If anybody listening to this is, like they hear about BrAva and they say, oh, I want to be a part of that, or how can I help? Or maybe like, I'm a family going through childhood cancer right now, like how can we connect with you guys? Like, just let us know, like what's the best way to get in touch with BrAva and help out in any way.
So you can contact us through Facebook. We have a BrAva Fight page, or email, which is bravacares@gmail.com. So definitely the email. I'm always checking that. Anybody who wants to help. Right now, we are a group of about 21 volunteer working moms. That is who BrAva is. Numerous of the members now are BrAva moms themselves, where their kid is, finished treatment and they wanted to give back. Over the years, we've had committee members that have come and gone. Life changes, kids grow, different things, priorities, and we've had people come back. So it all comes down to, we all have the same goal, and that is to help these kids no matter what. When I say 21 women, some of these are some strong-minded women. We had some strong women on this committee, and their determination is second to none. It's amazing. We might have a disagreement of how something should be done, but it's always looked past. It's always compromised on, because at the end of the day, we have the same goal. So I cannot say enough about the BrAva committee. They get stuff done. They're amazing.
Well, that's what Desney was saying too. She's like, I've never seen a group run like this before. And I'll be honest, I've been on a lot of committees, a lot of groups, a lot of whatever, and it feels like the same thing every time, sometime, where it's like all these politics and all this drama and people wanting their way. And then Desney was like, she's like, no, it's like something needs done, somebody does it. And it's just like,
things get
boom.
done.
Things get done.
And I'm like,
they're amazing.
man, how do you tap into that?
When we started the mom prom, which that in itself is
that's a huge event.
That came about. Do you know the backstory of that? No, I don't. So my best friend lives in North Carolina. Her name is Amanda, and at the time she worked for Cookies for Cancer.
Okay.
They were having a mom prom down there, which was supposed to be like 300 people. Approximately a month after Ava passed away, she called me and said, I want you to come down here for this mom prom. We want to honor you, along with 2 other moms. And I was like, no. Like, that sounds like literally the last thing on earth that I want to do right now, a month after my child passed away. she's persistent. She always has the best of intentions. And so she convinced me and another one of my friends from up here to go down there. And I was dreading it. It sounded like the worst time ever. But I mean, we did it. We got dressed up and we went, and I had one of the absolute best nights of my life. And I left there and I was like, it's because everyone there, they just wanted me to have a good time. Yeah. And for the past 2 years, I've felt guilty if I even smiled in public, if I even laughed in public, because you have a sick kid. What are you doing? You're not supposed to be out. Why are you out without your kid? Why aren't you home? Nobody said those things to me, but that's what was in my head, by all means, you know? I felt guilty for even being happy. And I was carefree for 3 hours while I was at this mom prom, where they told me over and over again, we just want this night for you, 3 hours of carefree time. And they just catered to me. And I came back and I told most of the committee about it. I was like, you guys have to come see this. So the next year, the majority of my committee, the BrAva committee, we all went down to mom prom. And I won a Tony Stewart hood of a car. Okay? I don't win anything. I am the most unlucky raffle person ever. I won a signed Tony Stewart hood to his car. How am I getting that home to Ohio? Yeah.
What do you do with that?
I'll be honest, I didn't realize how big a hood of a car actually is once it's off the car. We had a minivan and we made it work. It came home with us. And we had quite the adventure. And on the way back, everybody had such a good time and thought it was so magical. That was in September. And we're like, we got to bring this back. We got to bring this back. And the next April, we had our first mom prom. Sold out for 300 people within less than 2 minutes. And it's kind of been the rest of the story.
Now it's like one of the events of the year for this community. Like everybody knows about it. People love it. And they get very excited, very passionate about
they
it.
They do.
I think it's just awesome.
Community has rallied behind it like no other. And we always have our BrAva moms come, and that's when they get to see each other, and that's when I get to see them and their friendships that they've actually built, and they're taking pictures, and they're all dolled up. And once again, it's all I want for them is to have a few hours of carefree time with no judgments and feeling the support of 500 women there just to support them. Like, that's what the whole night is about. And
That's amazing. Incredible. Yeah. And we're just so thankful that like you guys are operating in this community and helping out so much, because it feels, and I don't know if it's actually getting more common or not, or what's happening, but it just feels like you turn around everywhere and there's a new kid. And I've
always wondered that. I'm like, is it more, or is it just because I know about it?
It's like, it feels like it's more, but at the same time, we're always getting more involved. So maybe we're just hearing about it, so you never know, but it just, every time it feels like that, there's always that initial just like stab of pain. And then there's just that, like, it almost feels like, all right, suit up and we're going to go help this kid, and I'm sure it feels a lot of the same way for you guys, but I'm so thankful to have BrAva in this area helping kids at the level and families at the level you guys are.
Thank you. I am grateful for what you guys are doing. I think it's amazing. I mean, you probably don't remember meeting me for the first time.
I actually, the first time I remember was at Little Warren Elementary, and Bridget and Desney were there, and Bridget was giving out bags.
The BrAva bags.
Yeah, the BrAva bags.
Yes.
Okay. Yes, that's what I remember.
That all started after you, after you were diagnosed.
Oh, yeah, because was I like the first kid to get one? Yeah, okay. I do remember that now. That's all coming back. Yeah. Yeah, but you know what's wild is, and Desney said this on her podcast, and I didn't remember it at the time, but it's a perfect example of how these things we say to people and these things we do for people, they don't even have to consciously be aware of it at the time. Sometimes it just sticks with them and changes their whole life. But it was that moment of, and I remember this moment very clearly, of being at the 2014 relay, and I spoke there, and I was still like reeling in the like angry, confusion, just like, I don't want to be a cancer kid. I just want to go off to college and be a normal kid. I was still in that kind of phase of things. And then Desney brought up, she's like, I don't know if you remember this, but like, you were that kid once. And she's like, I told you, like, I forget how she said it, but like, this is your way you can help them. They need to see you. And it's like, I just know who I am. And I know that her saying those words just immediately would flip a switch. Yeah. I'm like, all right, this isn't, and I was just talking to Leo about this. It's like, this isn't, these are awkward things to do, but this isn't for you. Right. This is for all the other people who helped you get here, know? And it's like, to me, it's like, I look at that, I was like, that, and you guys doing the BrAva bags and seeing BrAva back then, and then Desney saying that to me, like, that would have been such an underlying subconscious foundation for everything we're doing now. Yeah. So
look at you now.
So thankful for you guys for, doing what you're doing and inspiring kids like me and like Austin now to go on and change the lives of other people in any way we can.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah. It's truly an honor. It's an honor that I hate how I get to know these people, but it's an honor that I get to know the BrAva families. Because
there's not a lot of people that can help them in the ways that you can help them.
No.
And like you said, it is simply from the fact that for these parents who have lost children, you're somebody who understands that. And a lot of times that piece alone is so huge for somebody else, because like you said, like, it sounds like you didn't really have anybody like right there to talk to that had gone through that.
Right.
And that's how I was back, when I was going through what I went through. I didn't really have anybody that was like, that I could look to as like a peer or somebody, or like somebody that went through this, that like, that, oh, I could be like, like that person gets it and look where they are now. And so we try so much to be that for kids now. But yeah, that piece can be life-changing for people, and it can save them so much. It doesn't save them pain, I feel like. It doesn't change the situation. And like you say, it doesn't make it better, but at least I feel like it gives them a path forward, or a light at the tunnel.
Yeah.
Just like,
as long as they don't feel alone, as long as, as awkward, maybe they don't know me and maybe it feels awkward, they know that it's an option.
Yeah.
You can reach out to me.
Somebody else understands. Somebody else gets it. And somebody else has been through it before and survived it before. So, well, Traci, thank you so much for coming on. Thanks for your time today. Like I said, we were so honored to have you here. Guys, we're going to wrap this up pretty quick today, but I do want to let you know, like, as always, you guys know what to do. If you found something positive from this episode, which you absolutely certainly did, that this is another episode that it's not always easy to talk about, but it's incredibly powerful, and we know that it has the power to help people. So if you guys got something good out of this episode, please share it with someone who you think it would help, who you think it would provide some level of comfort or solace or positivity to, because at the end of the day, that is how we live out our mission and our vision at Impossible Performance, is by spreading this message to as many people as possible to help positively affect their lives as much as possible. Austin, brother, you got anything else?
All good. All good. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck at the marathon.
Oh, it's going to be so much fun.
He's going to crush it. We've
so much fun.
It's going to be an interesting year this year. It really is. But but circumstances change and we adapt to it, and we face it and do the best way we can and find our path forward.
I'll be thinking about you.
And we still show up.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely. So, all right, guys. Thank you for listening. Thank you for everything you do to help support this platform, support this show, and our efforts in spreading this message. Because at Impossible Performance, we are striving to build a global culture of strength, fostering a spirit of growth in constant pursuit of the impossible. Take care, and as always, be impossible.